Hey, what's going on there, guys? Nick here from Absolute MTG, and today we are starting off the Deck Doctor series here on YouTube. So this is episode 1, and I'm pretty excited to start off this series. In this series, we're going to be taking a look at the submissions that you guys send in via Twitter of deck lists that you would like to receive some help with. You want to kind of fine-tune things and get some critiquing with what cards you could like take out, what things you could substitute in, and ultimately just have more fun with the deck. So the first submission that we have in here today is from Joe is Anthem on Twitter, and he sent in this red-green aggro list that he wanted to see what I would change with it and what things that I would add in, and he said that his kind of like budget line that he had for the substitutions was around $80, which is definitely really awesome to have that much money to be able to make substitutions for this deck. And we're definitely not going to be spending that much money to change things in this deck. However, if you want to buy this deck from scratch, you might come into that realm of spending that much money to actually like put it together. The prices of the cards fluctuate, so it's never really going to be the like exact price that I could say in a video, but you are going to be spending more to actually put it together than for Joe to make the substitutions, of course. So now let's take a look at what he actually submitted for his list, and then we'll talk about the substitutions and changes. So for his list, he has a playset of Arbor Elf, which allows us to ramp up a little bit. He has a playset of Rakdos Cackler, which is essentially just a 2/2 for 1. He has 2 Strangleroot Geist, which is a 2/1 for 2 with haste and undying, which makes it pretty hard to have your opponents get rid of it permanently. He has a playset of Scavenging Ooze, 2/2 for 2, and it allows us to eat cards that are in the graveyard, exile them, and if we exile creature cards, we get to make the ooze bigger and gain life. He has a playset of Flinthoof Boar, which is essentially going to be a 3/3 for 2 that can get haste if we pay 1 red with this deck and having the outlet of mountains in here. He has 2 Burning-Tree Emissary, which produces mana upon entering the battlefield, 2 Lightning Mauler, which soul bonds and allows us to give another creature haste, 3 Mayor of Avabruck, which is an anthem for human creatures, and it can transform, and on its transformed side it makes 2/2 wolves, and it has a anthem for wolf and werewolf creatures. We have a playset of Ghor-Clan Rampager. So Ghor-Clan Rampager has the Blood Rush ability on it, but just as a norm, it's a 4/4 creature with trample for 4. And for non-creature spells, he has 3 Shock, just dealing 2 damage for 1 red, a playset of Searing Spear to deal with 3 damage to target creature or player for 2 mana, and a playset of Farseek, which allows us to search for either the shocklands that we have in our deck or for the mountains, because it's going to allow us to search for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card, which the shocklands have that dual subtype that we can interact with, and the mountains, of course, we can always find those with Farseek. So that's the list that he submitted. Now, the things that I kind of like noticed or noted whenever I was looking at this list were the ramping elements in this deck, and the reason why I wanted to take out cards like Farseek and Arbor Elf were because we don't really have any big things that we're going to be ramping into, so ultimately we're just kind of getting nowhere with those types of accelerating cards. Now if we were playing like heavy 5 drops, 6 drops, and maybe even like 7 drops, we could justify playing cards like Arbor Elf, Farseek, and any like Land of War Elf type cards. But in this type of a deck, that was kind of the first thing that I really wanted to cut out of here were the playset of Farseek, playset of Arbor Elf, just to kind of get those out of the way and make room for more kind of aggressive cards. Now, aside from that, another card that is really awesome but doesn't really fit the theme here is Mayor of Avabruck. Now, Mayor of Avabruck is awesome whenever it comes to like human tribal decks because he provides that +1/+1 buff across the board for other human creatures. He transforms and he can make a ton of 2/2s that are going to be essentially 3/3s, really. But there's not really a whole lot of human interaction going on in this deck, so that was another thing that I wanted to cut out there and make room for more things that will just be a little bit more aggressive than what we already have going on. So those were kind of the initial things that I wanted to take out. Aside from that, I wanted to take out Rakdos Cackler out of here just because Experiment 1 is... it's a little bit better just because Experiment 1 has the potential of getting bigger, and Experiment 1 can actually block as opposed to Rakdos Cackler, where if we unleash him, he's not going to be able to block our opponent's creatures if need be. Generally with aggro decks, you want to be attacking, but in certain cases, you do still want to be blocking, and having Experiment 1 as a blocker is pretty nice, and it also regenerates, but we'll get to the substitutions here in a second. Strangleroot Geist I wanted to take out as well because it's double green. It's an awesome creature card because of that haste and undying, and it's so hard for a lot of different decks to be able to ultimately deal with Strangleroot Geist, but double green is just a little bit awkward, and I really wanted to stress like heavy red whenever it comes into like the really early game for this type of a deck. And I just kind of wanted it to shift a different way where we're not depending on double green like right off from the bat. Scavenging Ooze is awesome, and I love to see it as like multiples in decks. However, it's not really necessary to have 4 copies of it, so I wanted to cut 1 copy of it, and this could be just perfect in the graveyard for any, or in the sideboard, and you can side it in for any like graveyard interacting matchups. So just taking 1 out is going to assure you that you're not drawing way too many Scavenging Ooze, because then they kind of fight for dominance on the board where you have to go back and forth with which Scavenging Ooze you want to progressively make bigger and which one you want to be more threatening or anything like that. So just having it as a 3 gives you like the perfect consistency that you want to see him and not just kind of jeopardize the situation with drawing way too many Scavenging Ooze. Other than that, pretty much the last thing that I wanted to take out, which the board looks pretty barren at this point, but I wanted to take out Shock just because Pillar of Flame is better in terms of how the meta is playing out right now. Pillar of Flame is awesome because it deals with cards like Voice of Resurgence, Blood Artist, and any cards that have any type of ability where they're leaving the battlefield and certain things are happening. People are gaining life, losing life, 2/2 tokens are being made, morbid triggers, anything like that. Just to have Pillar of Flame, it's really nice, and it's pretty important for those types of matchups. At sorcery speed, it really doesn't constrain you to like being worse of a deck, being like worse of an aggro deck because you're not playing instant speed cards that deal damage. Pillar of Flame is perfectly fine to have in there, even though it's just sorcery speed. So those were basically the things that we took out for spells out of the deck here. Now let's jump over and take a look at the cards that we are adding in. So like I said, where I wanted to just kind of stress like red for the early game, I wanted to add in Stromkirk Noble as a playset. So Stromkirk is awesome because he can't be blocked by humans, which may or may not be relevant. That's not the important part. He's a 1/1 for 1 red, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So if your opponent isn't playing any like early threats or early blockers or anything like that, Stromkirk Noble just ends up being just a blowout card that really just takes advantage of the field and is just going to get so much momentum really quick, and that's exactly what we want to do here. And our opponent's going to try and find ways to get rid of him, and meanwhile we're still not really doing anything. We only committed 1 red mana into him, and we can still have all of our other resources in our hand or on the board that our opponent has to worry about as well. Likewise, for 1-drops, I wanted to add in Experiment 1, which I mentioned before. He's a 1/1 for 1 green with Evolve, so as we're playing bigger creatures, Experiment 1 is going to get bigger himself. Whenever we play a creature that's bigger than him, we get to Evolve him, which is putting a +1/+1 counter on him, and it checks based on power or toughness as the creature that we have is entering the battlefield. So if we go like Experiment 1 on turn 1, turn 2, play Burning-Tree Emissary, then Flinthoof Boar, and we have a mountain, our Experiment 1 is going to evolve twice because Burning-Tree Emissary is a 2/2, and then hopefully Flinthoof Boar is going to be a 3/3. So you just get that Experiment 1 to be a 3/3 on turn 2, which is just nuts. So really love Experiment 1. It's just like a really perfect type of card for Jund aggro and also for red-green aggro. I also wanted to add in Hellrider as a playset because Hellrider is an awesome 4-drop for this type of a deck where we're playing around our creatures and we're not playing around like a dominant amount of like burn spells or anything like that. since we're still playing a decent amount of creatures, we might as well have Hellrider, where whenever Hellrider or another creature we control attacks, he deals 1 damage to the defending player. Hellrider himself has haste, and he's a 3/3 for 4, which makes him pretty able-bodied, but ultimately, even post-Wrath swinging in with Hellrider just by himself is perfectly fine for us, because we do have to get around situations like our opponent playing Supreme Verdict or Terminus or anything like that. Other than that, we have Burning-Tree Emissary, which I wanted to add in just as another copy, because Burning-Tree Emissary, it just gives you a lot of cool like synergy with not just only being able to play 1 creature, but being able to play like 2, or being able to play another spell on the given turn. Being able to play like Experiment 1, turn 1, turn 2, Burning-Tree Emissary into Lightning Mauler, or Burning-Tree Emissary into like Scavenging Ooze or Flinthoof Boar. There's just a lot of different possibilities that you can play into with Burning-Tree Emissary that are awesome. But it's kind of like that Billy Mays card, like, oh, that's not all. You get more and more, and you can just play so many more things. So I definitely like another copy of Burning-Tree Emissary in here. I have a playset of Rancor, and Rancor is awesome because it enchants a creature and it gives it +2/+0 in trample. And that is awesome, just where you have these creatures that are pretty sizable on their own, but trample can make the difference with your opponent having like 1/1 creatures that are going to just chump block. So being able to get that damage in and through and dealt to your opponent is going to be what's important for us. And then we have our Pillar of Flame, which I mentioned before, which is going to replace Shock. And just particularly, I like to have Pillar of Flame as a playset. I just want that consistency for playing up against matchups where we need the Pillar of Flame up against creatures that it's relevant against. So I like to have Pillar of Flame as a playset. Can you get away with playing it as a 3-of if you're just going card for card with replacing it for Shock? Yeah, absolutely, but it's just a personal preference of mine where I like to go deep with that type of a card where I just want to see it more times. So that's in terms of like all the spells and the creatures that we replaced, that's pretty much it. Now, in terms of the land base pretty much stayed exactly the same. The only thing that I wanted to change was actually just to take out 1 forest and add in 1 more mountain, and that's only because we added in more cards that are going to require red mana. But I mean, other than that, the land base pretty much just stayed exactly the same. So that is the new list that we have for red-green aggro, the suggested list, I would probably say more appropriately. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering related videos. If you guys want to submit a deck list for the Deck Doctor series, you can do so on Twitter at @MtG, and I'm going to have that posted up onto the video so you guys can see the @link. And the link is also going to be in the description as well, where you guys can use it as a reference. But be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content. And until next time, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.